All right, so now that the first installment of the college football playoff is done, overall thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I know people don't like the early mismatches and all that. I enjoyed it. I thought we got some good games. Last night's game was fun. Yes, it was not really all that competitive until maybe, late stages of the fourth quarter where Notre Dame made it interesting. That being said, people are complaining about what night it was put on. People are complaining about, the numbers and the ratings that are out there.
Who's complaining about what night it was put on?
That was a big talking point. There feels like there's no buzz. It's the day after the divisional playoffs. That's all anybody's talking about. Well, dude, all anybody's talking about today is the national championship game. Like the day after is when the discussion happens. To me, the only other better idea, and let me throw this at you guys, national championship game the Sunday before the Super Bowl. It's an opening. There's no Pro Bowls, whatever. No. Sunday before the Super Bowl national championship game.
Too far away.
Why?
I think the problem with that is the season's so long. Which, by the way, think about this. Notre Dame didn't play in a conference championship game, but they played 16 games. Last night was their 16th game. Imagine if you were a team that somehow was playing in your conference championship game, still made the playoffs, and then had to play in the first round, and you went all the way, right? Texas was, I guess, almost that team. But I sit there, I'm like, man, it's a lot of games. And maybe it's okay for... We're only talking about a handful of teams, right, that make it far enough where you're playing extended games. But it just feels like the season's so long. That's one of the complaints I think some people had. But I don't know how you go about weighing the rest of recovery for some of these kids, factoring in the academic calendar and schedule. And then on top of it, trying to make it a product that people are going to want to watch. I think the hardest thing... And if college football wants to grow, which I think it does because, the realignments, the college football playoff expansion, those are all good things for the sport. The problem is right now ESPN and Disney have a stranglehold on it. And it will never grow past the decisions of that network, which to me have kind of dwarfed its ability to grow to what it can be. And the reason why I say that is because, if you look at how it's presented, how they put it out there, it's a singular perspective on it instead of allowing a bunch of big networks to come in and play a role in it. And people are going to say, well, that's because, you're at Fox or whatever. And that's fine if that's your opinion. But I would say that if I worked at ESPN, I would say that I don't know that they're doing what's in the best interest of college football. They're doing what's in the best interest of ESPN and Disney. They just want to make money. They don't care about growing the sport. Like, they're into it as an investment. They're into it for business. When you think about every network that's a part of the NFL, yes, they're in it for a business standpoint too, but they all realize they all have to work with one another. They all have to help grow the NFL in order for it to be profitable for all of them. In this case, like when you only have one network that controls it all, it's kind of hard to then think like, okay, is ESPN, they're invested into it and trying to make it grow, but they're limited in what they can do. They don't have other partners to really work with in that regard. So, TNT got thrown a bone. They got a couple of games this year. Cool. They played no role in college football, really, at all, up until a couple of games in the playoff. So I understand the frustration. I don't know how you go about finding a day that works while you're mixing it around the NFL calendar and schedule without making it seem like it's an eternity. It does feel like it's a long road to go for a lot of these teams to get to a national championship. And I'm sure there's some people who get turned off and disinterested when their team's not a part of it.
I think the best team in America won the national title this year. And, people are going to complain the way they're going to complain. I could care less. I just think it comes down to, I know people will debate how the brackets are created, but at the end of the day, you still got to win enough games where it says you can either navigate or you can't. And whether it's considered to be an easy navigating or a less easy navigating or could be a level of super hard what you have to navigate to get to that championship round. I feel like, I don't know if it's coincidence. I don't think it's coincidence because the more games you have to play and it's in a playoff setting, in a playoff environment, knowing that it's one and done, I think you figure out who the best teams are. And regardless of how people think the selection went or how the bracket selection played out or whatever, the best teams made their way through the playoffs. And there's no way anyone can debate any differently. Like if it's Penn State, they made it through two teams. If it's Notre Dame, they made it through two teams. If it's Texas, they made it through, they had it bye, I believe, but they made it to wherever they made it to play against Ohio State. Ohio State had to make it through two teams, and they were tough teams. And it was a team that they had lost to already. So to me, in the end, the regular season is the regular season. Just like we talked about earlier, Michigan people can say that they beat Ohio State. So what? It's no different than regular season. We're just sitting there talking about Lamar Jackson. I mean, you can have a dope-ass regular season and not be able to get it done when it's a one-and-done situation. And so seeing these teams in a one-and-done situation and the team that was playing the best football and had the best roster ultimately ended up winning it all. And to me, it played out.
That's the one thing I do like about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry is that I think there was some concern that, well, if teams can still get into the playoffs with a loss, then, all of a sudden the regular season becomes null and void or something. It's like, no, the fact that rivalry still matters to the point to where there are going to be some Ohio State fans that are like, yeah, but we didn't beat Michigan.
Bruh, a team that played for the national title lost to Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Who cares?
But the point is
they fought their way back. They found their way into the playoff, and they played their asses off in the playoffs, and they beat teams that would kick the crap out of Northern Illinois.
And there are different discussions that can be had about all of it. And I look at it and I go, whatever you think of what this playoff was, the seeding, the buys, who got what, it's better than it was. This is better. I
thought it was dope.
Yeah, I thought it was fun, man.
I thought it was super dope. And also, it was fun being a part of it. I was happy that my team was a part of it. And anybody complaining about the mismatches in the opening week, I think that's canceled out to the environment and scene that was created in those home environments. Man, seeing that Notre Dame game on a Friday night, seeing Penn State at home in those conditions where SMU was I heard Eric Dickerson was talking about it on the Blowtorch, AM 570 LA Sports. And just talking about the environment there as an SMU guy, man, they didn't want any. Was he there? Yeah, they didn't want any part of that. The cold, the conditions bothered them. It affected them. Pete Prisco got fired up about cold, Arizona State again. It was cold.
Yeah, I think it was a success.
I thought it was a success. If you're going to complain, you're going to complain. But the bottom line is you make it into the tournament, you're in the tournament. Done. I don't give a damn what happened in the regular season outside of it leading to you being able to play in the in the playoffs. If you're not in the playoffs, I don't care about your opinions. Your team made it in, play it out, see what happens. And that's what had to happen this year. I like this expanded field. I don't know that it needs to be any bigger. I mean, unless you want to say there doesn't need to be a bye and you want them to play a game and you add a couple more teams. But for the most part, I just feel like this was I enjoyed this year. I enjoyed this much more than any other year as it applies to leading up to winning a national title.
It was awesome. I mean, I'll put it this way. I've got to go to two different home games. Went to Notre Dame and Ohio State. I was there, obviously, at the Orange Bowl. We were all there. So, you experience some of those atmospheres. And I was listening to Paul Maurice talk about this, the coach of the Florida Panthers, because he had gone to the Orange Bowl as well. There's a bunch of Florida Panthers hockey players that were there. And you listen to him talk about it just from a team that just won the Stanley Cup. And, his son had gone to Notre Dame, but he'd never been to a college football game before. That was his first one. And he goes, it reminded me of the playoffs, which for anyone who's been around hockey, there is, to me, no better sport playoff time than the NHL. There's just, if you haven't been to an NHL playoff game, you got to go. The intensity of it, the way the sport's presented, just
one of the best sporting events I've ever been to is the Stanley Cup final.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So to hear a guy who just won it, right? He just went to the mountaintop of it and say, hey, this made me feel like those are the playoffs. That's what you want. I don't think there's any doubt this year to me was a success. Now, are there some tweaks or some things that you like to improve upon? Sure. But a lot of that came from, some of the blue blood teams, like an Oregon, who, we have extra time to prepare. We win the Big Ten, and then we get knocked off because we got to face Ohio State. Here's the truth. At some point, you probably were going to have to face Ohio State, or if it's not Ohio State, one of the other better teams too. I mean, for all the people who want to complain about, Penn State, look at the draw they got. Well, okay, that's the luck of the draw. That's how some of this kind of works out. I mean, are you going to ask James Franklin? I'm sure he would have loved to have a bye, and they would have loved to win the Big Ten.
And we ended up losing.
Right.
We ended up losing.
But so the whole point is eventually, if there's only one team that wins it,
right,
everyone else is going to be disappointed with the outcome. That's part of the playoffs. So I don't know. I loved it. I thought the atmospheres, the home games, even the bowl games, I had an awesome time with you guys, man.
The bowl game was fire, man.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
I had a blast in Miami.
You did.
Yes.
You did.
Too much.
Saw that.
Way too much.
I saw your ass.
Way too much. Yeah, you did. Way too much fun.
Hey, let me ask you this.
Way too much fun.
Better environment, the semifinal game between Notre Dame and Penn State, or the national championship game between TCU and Georgia at SoFi? It was the Orange Bowl, and it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close.